Hi and welcome to this Edexcel A-Level Geography Enquiry Question Review. And this one is Coast Enquiry Question 3. How do coastal erosion and sea level change alter the physical characteristics of coastlines and increase risks? So, as always, the exciting bit, we move straight on to the specification. This is important because, as you know, it includes all of the key terms that you will need to understand. It will show you the key ideas and also the detailed content that goes within them. For the explain questions, it's likely that you're going to have to refer to one of these detailed content areas. So if you see some of these key ideas in the question, look for the restriction in there and it will relate to this one of these areas of detailed content. For the assess and evaluate questions, it's more likely that you're going to have to link a number of these different sections from within the detailed content and between different key ideas. It's also important to notice where we have these different world diagrams, as these will be compulsory case studies. It's also important to see the information in bold because these relate to the underlying themes of the course, the players, the futures, and the actions that can be taken. So as we move on to the overview, we can see that we're looking at sea level change and the different types and some of the landscapes it can form, coastal recession, the causes and some of the issues that can relate to that, and then some of the issues related to coastal flooding. What is important is that, as with the tectonics disaster risk equation, when we're thinking about risk, we need to consider the physical hazards involved. We also need to consider the human elements. This could be related to the vulnerability of the population, but also to the capacity to cope. So it is important that you think of these synoptic themes, think of the risk element, whenever you see the word risk, that you are considering the physical and the human elements. If there is rapid coastal recession, but there is nobody there, or coastal flooding, and there is nobody or no businesses there, then is there a risk because nobody is being affected by it? So, first of all, we're going to look at sea level change. Now, it's really important that we understand the two different types of sea level change that we talk about. We talk about eustatic change, and this is changes in the volume of water in the sea, causing it to rise or to fall. And when we talk about sea level change, although in the current scenario we're looking at rising sea levels, there has been evidence of falling sea levels in the past, which are very important, linking to different key landscapes. So, eustatic change, the change in volume of water. Now, this can be due to glacial and interglacial periods. When the glaciers start to grow because conditions are colder due to Milankovitch cycles, then the water is held in the ice and so sea level reduces. However, during the interglacial warmer periods, these glaciers and ice sheets and ice caps begin to melt and so the sea levels rise. Now, what we're experiencing at the moment is with the contemporary changes of climate change and enhanced greenhouse effect, we are seeing an increasing rate of melting ice, of great ice sheets in Greenland, of the glaciers in all mountain ranges. But also we have to consider the warming of the oceans. As the oceans warm, they expand by the process of thermal expansion. So these would be the glacial periods. We're looking at sea level changes over tens of thousands of years, over cycles of millions of years, in line with the Milankovitch cycles. But there are also some shorter term eustatic changes in sea level which can have big impacts. These are obviously the daily tidal sessions which can flood salt marshes, mud flats and change the landscape in that way. Tsunamis can also have a major impact. Not only do they cover the low-lying coastal plains in floodwater, but they can have a massive impact on the landscapes, washing away unconsolidated material. And the same can be true of storm surges created by tropical storms and low pressure systems. The low pressure in itself means there's less pressure pressing down on the water, so the sea level can rise. And that merged with the strong winds, which are blowing a body of water, along with the high waves, and if in time with high tide, can lead to great changes of the coastal landscape. There's also isostatic change, which is changes in the land height. One is glacial rebound, that as the glaciers have melted in the northwest of the UK, which were covered in glaciers, ice sheets 3 or 4 kilometres thick, as these melt, then the land starts to expand because the pressure is released off it. However, in the southeast of the UK, where there weren't these glaciers, the rising in the northwest is causing a tilting or falling level of land height in the southeast. Isostatic change can also relate to coastal deltas, because due to damming further upstream, these can starve areas of the river sediment, and so the salt marshes and the deltas can start to be washed away and reduce in height. Also, as land is built on them, there can be subsidence of the lands, making them lower. There can also be tectonic changes in millions of years in terms of tectonic uplift, forming anticlines and synclines that we see on the Dalmatian coastlines, but also on a shorter term in terms of post-earthquake. Often, post-earthquake, due to liquefaction, you can get subsidence and falling. But sometimes along fault lines, the movement of the earth can also cause small-scale uplift of certain areas. Now, this will lead to a whole range of different landscapes. On the submergent side, which can be a mixture of different processes, we can get rias formed. This is where river valleys and estuaries are flooded by the rising sea levels. Fjords are very similar but have different characteristics because these were glacial valleys, so very much more steep-sided and straighter channels, such as the Norwegian or New Zealand South Island fjords. And again, these are created by the rising sea levels. Other submergent landscapes are the Dalmatian coastlines of Croatia, where tectonic processes were very important in creating the synclines and anticlines, and then sea level change became important as it flooded these areas. So with all of these submergent features, it's important to realize that a whole range of processes, from river erosion for rivers, for rias, glacial erosion for fjords, and tectonic processes on Dalmatian coastlines. The same can be said for emergent coastlines, particularly those relic or fossil cliffs and beaches, caves, arch, stacked stumps that are found in places like the Isle of Arran in Scotland. Here, the original cliffs and beaches were formed by normal marine processes when sea levels were higher. And so marine processes would be very important in them. However, as the sea levels have dropped, then this led them to be left high above ground. However, as the Isle of Arran is in the northwest of the UK, there is also isostatic rebound, which is leading to the rising of the land as well. So here we can see there are a number of key different features, and all of them are important in the formation of them. As we move on to coastal recession, now we've already looked a little bit at some of the causes. This links into the marine erosion and weathering. So when we look at this, what are the causes of coastal recession? Well, we can look at the impact of lithology and structure of rock and how this can influence mass movement and weathering. The important action of waves, the direction of them, the impact they have on marine erosion, on transportation and deposition or movement of beach material, meaning that areas can be eroded or recess more rapidly. There are also impacts of human intervention. Management can slow coastal recession in some places, but can speed it up elsewhere, as you'll see in Enquiry question 4. And this is because that when you do one intervention within a sediment cell or coastal system, this will have an impact further else along with it. And so coastal management can have an impact. But as we saw with deltas, Rivers, dams and river management can also affect sediment formation and sediment production, so that will also have an impact. With climate change, seeing the increasing levels of storms and storm surges, increasing wave energy, this is also going to be a key factor increasing the risk of coastal recession. And along with submerging coast with eustatic and isostatic changes, this means that the waves can get to the cliffs more easily, increasing the levels of recession. Now also, this is going to lead to some human loss issues and the social, economic and environmental and political decisions that need to be made. These are looked at in a little bit of detail in Enquiry question 4, but also having case studies on these is very important. Now, the increasing level of risks could be due to the increasing population and economic activity in coast. More people are living on the flat coastal plains, which are marginal lands. The protection and management can be increasing risk or reducing risk. As levels of development have increased in coastal locations, therefore when recession occurs, it's likely to increase the economic losses. And governance also has an important role to play. Now this section here also links to flooding as well, because these risks, the increased development, population, governance, protection and building on marginal lands, also relates to the coastal flooding side, highlighted by this link here. So again, what are the causes of it? Well, climate change, increased rainfall, and because we can have increased river flooding, this could increase flooding of low-lying coastal plains as well, where the seawater and river water meet. We've also got the destruction of the natural ecosystems, which act as a natural flood defence and would build up naturally with sea level change. So the salt marshes and sand dunes seen in Enquiry question 1, but also the rainforests of the sea, the mangroves and coral reefs are also very important ways which would grow naturally to help reduce coastal flooding. Also, river floodplains and wetlands, when these are being damaged, will also help to increase the risk of coastal flooding. Low-lying lands are increasingly at risk. The islands and atolls of the Pacific, many of these are only a couple of meters above sea level, so places like Tuvalu and the Maldives are at greater levels of risk. Also places like Bangladesh, the Netherlands, will also be under a great deal of risk. Places like Norfolk, which is reclaimed land, is also at risk. But there are differences between the developing and developed nations, as Holland and Norfolk may be able to put prevention in place, protection in place, whereas Bangladesh can't. So, other issues of coastal flooding could be saltwater incursion. This is where, and links to the water topic, is because of water extraction, the salt water can get into clean water supplies, leading to many problems. It is also likely to lead to climate refugees, where these people in the low-lying islands and coastal plains have nowhere else to go. They can no longer survive there and so have to move to other areas. And in the examples of Tuvalu and the Maldives, this will mean moving to mainland countries. Places like New Zealand and Australia would be seeing the refugees move there. But the coastal areas around African continent will also likely to see major climate refugees. Not forgetting as well that even major cities like London, New York, Mumbai, the coastline, the panhandle of America in Florida are all at great risk. And there is only so much that can be done to protect from flooding. So in the long term, it is likely that millions, if not billions of people are going to be displaced, causing possible conflicts. So overall, we can see Enquiry question 3. How do coastal erosion and sea level change alter the physical characteristics of the coastlines and increase risks? And remembering that risk is the physical and human element. Link it back to the disaster risk equation. It's very similar to that. Well, thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been useful. Take care. See you again soon. Take care. Bye.